A leader in event education, the Event Leadership Institute offers on-demand video classes, interviews with industry mavericks, and online instructor-led professional development courses taught by industry experts. Visit eventleadershipinstitute.com for more information and to see a schedule of upcoming classes.
Are you a followers? Okay, so we're gonna call the ad.
Welcome to Gather Geeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Executive Editor Beth Kormanik.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth. How are you today?
Doing well, thank you. And our guest today is Matthew David Hopkins. He is Creative Director of 360 Design by Matthew David. Based in New York, Matthew David is no stranger to celebrity events, having designed and planned events for Madonna, Robert De Niro, and Jamie Foxx. We've all heard of them. His corporate clients have included Bloomberg LP, Target, and Nickelodeon. And he also designed 2 inaugurations for former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. On the nonprofit side, he has produced benefits for the National September 11th Memorial and Museum, the Public Art Fund, and the Ad Council. And on top of all of that, he has another brand for social events, Matthew David Celebrations. Like many event designers, he came in through a side door after studying architecture and creating floral designs at a restaurant. David, I'm always fascinated to hear how people bring experiences that may not seem connected to the event industry, but actually are, and they use that to build their unique perspective.
I think that it's exploration. They're bringing this different kind of exploration into it. I actually worked on one of Matthew David's events when the Republican National Committee came to New York City and they did the opening event. I was on the board of New York City and Company, NYC and Company, and we had to help staff it. And they did an incredible job of teaching the volunteers of the event how to really behave properly, act, and really get the most out of their volunteers. And I thought their briefing alone was so interesting, and I learned a ton from what these guys do.
Mm-hmm. We could probably do a podcast just on that topic,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Prepping your volunteer staff. Well, BizBash inducted Matthew David into our Hall of Fame this year, and we had a chance to talk with him about his theory of great decor, messaging at events, and the key questions he asks every client. So let's take a listen.
Matthew, so we've known each other a long time. You've been actually in the industry for longer than you look. You look young, but you've been around for a long time.
I have been around for a long time.
You've been around since
1994.
1994. What made you get into this business? You're an event designer, but you were not always just an event designer.
Correct.
Tell us your story.
Yeah, I grew up in Maryland, and I graduated from the University of Maryland with a Bachelor of Science in Architecture. And when I got out of school, I just felt there has to be more to my life. And so I really picked up, I was working for a retail and exhibit design build firm in Virginia. And I moved to New York. I just picked up and moved. I became a waiter. And the restaurant that I was working in, there was these incredible sculptures made out of flowers and vegetables. And it just was so different, and it just made me think of these sculptures and floral design and decor in a completely different way, and became something that I was interested in building a career around.
That is a classic New York story.
Yeah,
Pick up everything and move here.
Yeah.
So how did that background in architecture then inspire you as you're designing events?
Well, it really it helped quite a bit because I started my career by working for another restaurant for the same restaurateur, doing flowers for the restaurant, and people quickly asked me to do their events at those restaurants and then outside of those restaurants, and literally within a year or so, they were asking me to do events, and they loved the way I did the design and decor, and then asked me to start planning their events.
So what was that secret sauce? What did you do that was so special that got the attention of all these people? What do you think it is?
Well, I come from a different point of view. And so because my degree was in architecture, I learned to think about in school how people move through space and time. Mm. And so it was a natural tie-in for me to and by the way, architecture is something that I admire, that I care about, and it takes too long. Like I don't have quite that amount of patience. So event design and creating events became a great vehicle for me to express my creativity, because it happens. There's a project, it comes and goes maybe within a year or a few months, and you're working on multiple events, and they come and go fairly quickly, and that really works well for me. I like that.
Do you think that event design is a way to take architecture to the next level because you can do it fast and sort of see what works in some ways, or is it architecture is a lot more permanent than an event?
Well, I think architecture is more permanent. I definitely believe in that, but the truth is that both of the things are really how people move through space and their experience moving through space and time. And so I feel it's so fortunate to be able to be given the opportunity to create and craft somebody's 3 or 4 hours, and maybe it's 300 people's 3 or 4 hours at the same time, or maybe it's 10,000 people's 10 hours, which I've done as well. So I love the idea of setting it all up and then opening the doors and just seeing how people move through the space and time and interact and have their own experience in the areas that we've created for them. I think it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. I would love for you to talk about one event in particular in which you designed holographic centerpieces.
Oh, okay.
That was such a creative thing, and I think is an example of how you're moving things forward using technology that we had no idea existed too long ago. This is for a benefit for the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, right?
Absolutely, yes. And it's actually a fascinating story because when I designed, so that's a fundraising event for 1,000 guests, and one of the challenges is that we have to create an experience that is both intimate for each person and also grand in its scope and scale, so that at the moments when we want to get everybody's attention towards the stage and we want them to focus on that, the room has to be able to adjust and capture their attention. But there's also these great moments of intimacy, and when people are seated around a table, there's an incredible, basically a marketing opportunity in the middle of the table. Mm. And Decor is a term that David, you coined, and I remember you telling me about that word like 3 years ago at lunch, and I love that word because educational decor is really what we're talking about here. And I believe that certainly for not-for-profits, investing in a marketing opportunity is very different than throwing some flowers on a table. And by the way, I can make the most friggin' gorgeous flower arrangement you could ever imagine, and that's great, but it doesn't necessarily carry the message of the organization, whereas we have this opportunity to mold and craft what goes on the table so that it carries the message too. And what I care about today and for a long time is, and I really start the process with my client by saying, what do you want your guests to walk away knowing about you or your organization? And so when often my clients will come to me with ideas, and this client had seen this holographic thing done with iPhones, or I think it was an iPhone. And so then the challenge becomes, okay, how do we take that and elevate it so that it fits in this elegant, beautiful, upscaled experience and environment? And so everywhere I had seen it done, you could see the iPad or the iPhone, and to me that lessened the experience or the interaction. So I designed it so that they were done with Samsung pad of some sort, and we put them upside down on a glass cube with a pyramid below it, and then a little sort of boxwood hedge on top of it. And so we hid it basically in the boxwood hedge, and when you looked at it, it was the tree of life, which is a very significant memento at the memorial. It's a tree that had survived the attacks, and so the tree of life came to life at every table. And I think that was such a great way to have it feel contemporary and carry the message.
And people obviously talked about it.
Yeah.
Because you want that's what you wanted people to take away.
Well, that's a good point too, because my theory about great decor, and this can be true for a not-for-profit benefit fundraising dinner. It can also be true for a wedding. It can be true for a birthday party, a corporate, a product launch. That when we as people get into these environments and experiences, there are times when maybe we're next to somebody we don't know, and if somebody has given us great things to talk about, we walk away having had a better time and maybe don't even know why. But if I'm sitting next to you and we don't know each other and there's great stuff to talk about, we might get to know each other in a way that we wouldn't have if we were like bored or there wasn't great material around us. And so I believe people walk away having had a better time. And that is part of this idea of what do they walk away knowing about you, which is that that person or organization or company or institution knows how to entertain. They respected my time, by the way, because I think in events when if like the show is dragging or cocktails last a little bit too long and you don't feel like your time is respected, you are less likely to pay attention. And so we run very tight shows because we feel that the guests have a better experience when they can relax into the evening knowing that it's not going to drag out because somebody has planned for and is taking care of their time.
Right. This is the event planner as master of human dynamics.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. What are your rules? I had a talk with a friend of mine the other day that said that cocktails should be no more than 45 minutes.
I agree with that, actually.
And that's
yeah.
And dinner, the same thing. And she doesn't even do first courses. She thinks you go directly to the main course, and then you go to dessert off in another place. That's the way she's doing it now.
I like that, actually. It's a little bit different for me. I'm used to having 2 courses. I love the idea of a tight, short cocktail. We call it a cocktail hour, but I prefer it to be 45 minutes. We also, at times have to schedule in time for people to move from cocktails to their seat. We have to think about like how long does that take? How can we make it as easy for them as possible so they can find their seat? And that should come out of that hour. So 45 minutes, 15-minute time to move, and then and by the way, like I would say that I don't necessarily believe in hard and fast rules. One of the things that I believe in about creativity is to generally as a person, just be open. Right. And then we start to understand, like, the first part of our crafting an experience is about information gathering. What does the client, what's good for that client? What is their personality? What do they care about? And if the things I've been talking about are things that they care about, then yes, a 45-minute. But I have had clients that wanted an hour-and-a-half cocktail party.
Wow.
And it worked for them. I mean, I was surprised, but I pushed and pulled, we let it happen, and it worked really well for them. So I just, but as a general rule of thumb, I think cocktail portion should be pretty tight and sweet.
How, you were here in the 90s.
Yeah.
You were here in the 2000s.
I was.
You're here in the 2010s.
Yes. And I plan to be here for much longer, too.
Mm-hmm. And I plan to be here as well. But how have you seen, the world has changed dramatically, right? Do you design differently now than you did then? Is it a completely different evolution?
Well, when we get right down to it, the way the information age and technology has evolved our society, there's an idea that it's distracting everybody, that maybe you don't even need to have an event because you can do something on social media or something. But the truth is just like brick and mortar stores, events are tactile, real moments when people come together. That's not going away. And that, I think, is the most meaningful part of it. And it's more meaningful today than it ever was before. And so I think that there can be great social media events. I think there can be great, by the way, I think there can be great social media extensions of your event, taking it out of the four walls. But the truth is that the idea of people coming together in real life, interacting with each other, I think is very powerful, is not going away anytime soon. And that's at the heart of what we do. And when you think about it that way, you know, the production schedule is so important. The run of show is so important. How the guests will perceive the event from the minute they receive the save the date through when they walk in the doors, through the event, and what they walk away with, it's all very tactile. And I think has to be handled in that way.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe that the rest of the world has caught up with us in terms of believing that? Or do you still think we have a lot of missionary work to do?
I think some have and some haven't. You know, it's interesting when you look at things like fashion, you know, the cutting edge fashion is on the runways in New York and Paris and big cities, and then it sort of proliferates out into the rest of the world. And, you know, I think this message is one that, you know, there's a level of people who really get it, and there's plenty of other people that don't yet get it. And the truth is that, frankly, one of the things that I think is very cool about being in business today is that we really have to find people that we connect with and that we get. And I mean that back and forth. It's a relationship. And the client that's right for us are the ones that really get that. And I think there are clients that, you know, we meet with them, we develop a proposal and that kind of thing. And when we don't get the job, I usually think that's probably right. And I think that they probably don't get it to quite that level.
That's really interesting. And I think you bring an interesting perspective because you have two different divisions to your company, or two separate companies.
We're
describe it.
You could say either. We're two separate brands, but basically the same company and different teams of people that make them operate. And basically one is social, and the other is corporate and big not-for-profit fundraising events.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's the same thing. When you talk about clients, you mean you connect with them on both the social and the corporate side. You kind of, either you're on the same page or you're not?
Yeah, I think that's true. Ultimately, the thing that we see is that when we're doing social events, it's personal to them. Everything has to be approached from just a slightly different angle. The way that we do our proposals is a little bit different for our social clients than our corporate clients. In general, our social clients want to understand, you know, basically what is it and what does it do and how much does it cost. And our corporate clients want to know where every single dollar goes. If our social clients saw what our corporate estimates look like, they wouldn't necessarily understand all of the parts and pieces. But our corporate clients tend to be a little bit more savvy. They know more about the industry. They know.
Well, they're doing it over and over again, so
exactly,
they understand what goes into
They see the audiovisual line item, and they don't freak out.
That's exactly right. And from the other side, to them, it's personal. It's, you know, and they take it personally. Like, and so, you know, our approach to them is a little bit different. But I have to say that by both, you know, Matthew David Celebrations is our side that does social, and 360 Design Events is our side that does our corporate and not-for-profit fundraising. And the truth is that my personality is in both of those sides, and so I can shift gears, but I'm still me. And you know, there are brides that I connect with or don't connect with. There are corporate leaders that I connect with or don't connect with. So we want to make sure that connection is there, regardless, because I think that it's about relationships. And you know, in the same way that I start the process by trying to understand what do you want your guests to know about you when they leave, I also care about building the relationships. So it's not just about the event. It's it's not, and it's about the process too, but it's also about building a relationship, and that's.
I want to close on, unless you have something else.
Go ahead.
I want to close on one controversial topic.
Okay.
I knew you years ago, and you were heavily into sustainable design.
Yes.
Were you ahead of yourself on that, or is it still something that people ask for?
Is that controversial?
Well, it's controversial in that they're not necessarily doing it, right?
It's interesting because what we see is that, and by the way, we still have, we still do that. We use a common sense approach in our offices to sustainability, such as recycling and, for example, using recycled copy paper and paying attention to not printing so much. I mean, we take a common sense approach to that, but also we have a great relationship with Material for the Arts, where we donate gently used or over-ordered materials, and we have, and they recycle it, by the way, into the New York City public school system, and Material for the Arts has become the largest supplier of art supplies to the New York City public school system. And so we still do that. We've done that for years, and we did that before it was in style. We did that when it was in style, and we're still doing it. We care.
Is it not that it's in style? Is it expected, or is it something where some people get it and some people don't? We're New York City, don't forget. And
I have to be
best.
honest and say that less and less people are concerned about that.
Yeah.
And so it's not the leading edge of our marketing at this point.
It used to be like
it used to be
really
the leading, yeah.
went forward on that.
Yeah, I did, and I cared about it,
Yeah.
and I still do. And it just is not the most important thing to what we see from our clients any longer. But we're still doing it. It's just not as the leading edge of our marketing at this point.
Fascinating. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And congratulations on being inducted into BizBash's Hall of Fame.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And I'm excited to be doing this too. I listen to Gather Geeks in the car on my way in, and I love the podcast, and I'm getting great information from it. So I'm so happy to contribute.
How can people get in touch with you?
They can check out our website at 360designevents.com, MatthewDavidCelebrations.com, or call our New York offices, 212-804-8045.
So that's the world according to Matthew David. He's a producer who's looking to create memorable events that really communicate a message. Every part of event decor is a place to reinforce your brand message, even centerpieces, and that is coming from a master florist. And David, he even referenced your concept of, am I saying this right, Educor?
Educor.
Right. So expand on that concept for our listeners who aren't familiar with it.
So I had the honor for the 8 years of the Obama administration of being what I call a voluntold, and I'm doing air quotes that you can't see, because one of my friends became the chief of protocol and I was recruited to help out. And one of the things that we found out is that if you call decor Educor and make it purposeful, all of a sudden there's a little bit more budget for those kind of things. So we call it Educor, so that if you put a flower piece, a centerpiece on the secretary's table, and there's a story behind it, it's an educational decor piece. A step and repeat becomes an education board. So it's a little bit of a way to get more purpose out of your event and also communicate the value to the stakeholders that are preparing the budget.
Right. That's a great strategy for event planners trying to justify their budgets and get that message out to guests. In addition, it simply gives something that people can talk about. And
it makes it more, literally, you're really thinking about it much more strategically when it's Educor, because it has to connect and it has to relate to the people that are having the discussion around the piece. Because decor, according to our friend David Rich, is really a cue to get people to talk to each other. So it really is a two-way communications in a sense. So the decor has to resonate.
Right. It's a way to get people to connect with each other, start networking, spark conversations, and
feel in this temporary situation that they're taking the journey together.
Right. Exactly.
Great. So Beth, what is going on at BizBash? Let our listeners know.
Well, I wanted to let people know about our social channels. If you haven't been interacting with us on social, it's time. So stay in touch with us on Instagram at BizBash. We're also tweeting at BizBash. We're on Facebook. And you can also follow Gather Geeks specifically on Twitter, which is at Gather Geeks. And finally, find us on LinkedIn at BizBash's Event Planners Gather group. There are so many lively conversations from event professionals taking place there. So there's an opportunity to jump in and have your voice heard.
I think we have 80,000 or 85,000 people in that group, which is pretty incredible.
It is incredible, but it's not surprising considering how many event professionals are out there who want to connect with each other, get ideas, and we use it to find sources for our stories. So if you want to connect with us that way, we'd love to see you out there.
Yeah, we take our social seriously.
Exactly. We're seriously social.
We're seriously social.
Great. Well, we'll see everyone back here next week. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Beth.
Gather on.
Gather on. We're doing it together.
Jinx.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the Gather Geeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of Gather Geeks. Until then, gather on. Invest in yourself and your staff with self-paced online event education designed to fit into your busy schedule. Subscribe to the Event Leadership Institute for only $25 per month and gain access to an extensive on-demand video library of classes, as well as interviews with industry leaders. Best of all, you can watch classes in small pieces or all at once. For more information, visit eventleadershipinstitute.com.